Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Lynda Doepker. I'm in St. Louis metro area and have a daughter at University of Chicago. I'll be working with the YCBK team on communications.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Friends, super excited about our announcements today. First of all, I'm not flying solo. I'm here with Lynda Doepker. Hi, Lynda.
Hello.
And our super astute regular people, I call you our listening family, those of you who never miss an episode, which is almost 60% of our listeners, according to our questionnaire. You may remember that name, Lynda Doepker, because she was an interviewee. What was that, Lynda? Half a year ago, maybe? 6-9 months? Who knows?
Probably 6 or 9 months ago. That sounds right.
Yeah. And so I interviewed Lynda on the topic of using parent Facebook groups. And a number of you, in fact, someone as recently as last week reached out to say how helpful that interview was. And so it's the same Lynda Doepker. There are not two Lynda Doepkers out there, at least not in the YCBK world. For those who don't know, she's in the Metro St. Louis area. And I said at that time that, can you come back and tell us what happened with your daughter's search? And so why don't you give us an update?
Well, it was an arduous journey, but I'm pleased to say that she is in the process of packing for University of Chicago and will be starting in just a few weeks.
Yay! So that's a stone's throw from Dave's house. So we're all like converging together here. So which is great. But I'm very excited because Lynda's actually just joined our team and she has hit the ground running. It's been about a month. She's doing fantastic work, and she's going to be wearing out quite a few different hats for us. So just like she was astute at getting into those Facebook groups, she's also pretty savvy when it comes to building up Facebook as a platform. So one of her roles will be giving us more of a Facebook presence. Anything you want to say about that, Lynda?
Yeah, I'm excited to, first of all, join the team and working alongside you and everyone else. It's been terrific so far. And looking forward to reviving Facebook pages and getting more information out there. And same with Facebook. And I know we're growing our Instagram account and blogs as well.
Yeah, so Lynda's very kind. She said, I forget what word she used, reviving. So she should have said resuscitating from the dead. It's just kind of been lying dormant. Facebook was something that Anika spearheaded, and Anika has been off the podcast now since episode 171, and we're up to like 247 or whatever we're at. So that's a year and a half that we haven't really had much Facebook. It's just kind of been there. So that's one thing that we're excited about Lynda doing. But there's other things that Lynda's going to do. So for one, she's going to help me with announcements. And so in announcements on the Monday episodes, as you know, we have announcements and then we have our interview on Monday episodes. And so you'll be hearing her quite a bit. Hoping more than me even. So that'll just be one less thing for me to do. But it'll be either one of the two of us will do announcements. So I'm really grateful for that. And so that's one thing she'll be doing. And then another thing, and we mentioned this, I think the last couple of weeks, is a re-rollout of YCBK Plus. And we're really excited about this. Why don't you talk about that, Lynda, what we've discussed and what we have in mind for this?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So we're going to be taking still the content that you would be getting with YCBK Plus, and we will be putting that out in easily readable chunks of information on the website. And then, so when you get an email, you'll get kind of like a digest of this information and along with what else has been going on in the YCBK world. So you'll have links to the recent podcasts and interviews along with that YCBK Plus information.
Yeah, and I don't talk about this that often because I try as much as possible to keep what I do with School Match for You, which is my counseling practice, separate from YCBK Plus. It's just something, I don't know, I've just always kind of felt like it's important to not talk about what I do on that side on the podcast. I want the podcast to be free information for anybody, not some kind of promo thing. But I do want to mention that Lynda's also a member of our School Match for You team. Very excited about that. And for those of you who do work with me in that capacity or with Lisa and through School Match for You, she's very strong with organizational skills. And so she's serving in an assistant counselor role. And what that means is she'll be helping students a lot with organization, with planning and accountability. And so if you're working with either Lisa and I or that capacity, you'll be getting to know Lynda more in that role, as well as she'll be making sure that your student stays on task and carries out the tasks. So we've got a lot of hats that you're going to be wearing there, Lynda, but we know you're up for the task.
Well, I look good in hats, Mark, so that's good.
Awesome. I think St. Louis is taking over. So we have Lisa with St. Louis roots and now Lynda with St. Louis roots. By the way, everybody, I've told you this before. I can't get my kids straight. You know, I grew up really upset with my dad because he would call me Mormon and my brother Narc. And I would be like, how hard is it? There's two of us. I'm Mark. He's Norman. Well, talk about something you put your foot in your mouth when you're a parent and you have two kids. So I'm always calling Joy Cares Joy. So I'm like, if I can't get that right, then so you can imagine I've already messed up like a million times with Lisa and Lynda. It's really bad.
I answer to both now.
Well, you're great. And Lisa's great too. She was great with answering to Anika. So I'm just telling you right now, I'm going to mess up, but I'll do my best to keep Lynda and Lisa separate, which is great. So anything else you want to share?
Just really happy to be here and be a part of the team.
And we're thrilled to have you. And I will say this, that Lisa and I both worked with Lynda's daughter, Sam, through the process. So Lisa's jubilant as well because, you know, we both got to really actually become, at one time Lynda said at the end, I feel like you're family. Like we're ending the counseling process, but I feel like you're family. And I'll also say this, her husband, Joel, has been great. He's in the education world. He works in the community college space. And for those of you who really liked my interview I did with Steve Robinson, the president of Lansing Community College, that came from Joel, Lynda's husband, who said, I've got the perfect guy for you to interview on community colleges. So he's part of this whole little network, even if he's behind the scenes too. So it's all great. So we only have one other announcement today, and this one came from Lynda. Lynda, you're the one who first told me this, but Caltech has made a couple big announcements. And I'm just going to touch on this now because there's so much meat in this announcement that I really want to do an in the news on it. But for now, I'll just say this, that two things that are clear. They are reaffirming that they will continue to be, use your term, test blind, score free, test free, all synonyms. They originally made a 2-year commitment in 2020. They have extended that to a 5-year commitment, and they're using language that is very strong about what their research is showing. It's not good for the College Board of the ACT. I'll put it like that. It is diametrically opposed to what MIT has announced. So that's a big announcement from them. They will continue and add 3 more years on to this study, but the first 2 years have been very revelatory and very convincing to them that they don't need test scores to make good decisions. That's where they're at so far. And the other big announcement is that they are, this is confusing. They are, because I'm going to use their term, they're adding restrictive admissions. There's restrictive early action. Now, let me tell you why this is confusing. I have consistently used language to differentiate single choice early action from restrictive early action, because that's how the schools have done it. Single choice early action has only been 4 schools. It's been Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford, and that's it. Single choice early action means that you cannot apply to another early action private school, or obviously an early decision school. So you need to be signaling to them that we're the first choice. Now, there's exceptions for public schools. There's exceptions for rolling admissions. There's exception for international schools. There's some exceptions, but it has applied to private schools that offer early action, which is a lot of schools that fall in that bucket. A couple hundred, almost maybe over 300 now. Last time I checked, it was like 275. So that has been single choice early action. Restrictive early action, only 2 schools have been in that category. There were 3 when we started the podcast. It was 3 Catholic powerhouse schools of Georgetown, Boston College, and Notre Dame. But Boston College dropped restrictive early action about two cycles ago to go to ED1, ED2. So the only 2 schools that have had restrictive early action have been Georgetown and Notre Dame. What is restrictive early action? Well, you can apply to any other early action school. You just can't apply to an early decision school and them. So in other words, you need to be free to accept their offer. In other words, we don't want to be reading your application, and meanwhile, we're your clear backup because you're EDing somewhere and you're not free to accept our offer. But you're free to apply to the, last I checked, 275 early action schools out there, whether they're private or public or not. So here's what's confusing. Caltech is basically doing the same thing that Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, and Yale are doing. They have gone to single choice early action, but they're calling it restrictive early action. So this is why this stuff is so confusing. So think of it as the same version of it. Tell you the truth, it's probably a better name because it is so much more restrictive. It really is so much more restrictive. But I know that might seem confusing, but just to repeat, Caltech will now be joining Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford in not allowing you to apply to other private schools through an early program, ED or EA. And we'll be going more into it when we do in the news about why they're doing it and what the research shows about ED. But that is effective right away. And Lynda, because you're always scouring things, you're a great person for announcements. You're the one who scooped me and told me that.
I'm surprised.
Hey, I get scooped. I always say I learn something from everybody, and that was a case in point. So, friends, you're in for a real treat. This interview Lisa does with Marichal Gentry, he brings a wealth of experience. He has worked in 3 different school settings. He's worked at the University of South, Sewanee, also known as where he graduated from. He's worked at Yale, and he's also worked at Middlebury, and multiple years at all of these schools in high-level leadership roles in student life, student affairs, and as a dean of students. So he's seen pretty much all of the areas where kids mess up. What is it that causes kids to not graduate? What is it that causes kids to get suspended? That causes kids to just go down the wrong path? And so what he's doing is he's bequeathing his wisdom to our listeners, students and parents, in 10 areas, both this week and next week. And I really honestly believe we have not done a more important interview from the standpoint of how to be successful in college. And so I'm really excited that Lisa's going to be taking the lead, and she's going to be doing a series of interviews designed to be successful in college. She'll be doing one later this fall that you'll hear about how to take advantage of study abroad and study away programs. Over the course of the next 2 years, you can expect to hear her do interviews on things like advisors and how to take advantage of the advising system, student success centers, disability services, multicultural affairs. There's just a range of services, mental health, career centers. There's just a range of support services that are there to ensure success when you actually get to college. And so I'm going to focus more on the admission side, and she's going to focus more on the success in college side. And this particular interview, she just comes out with the best one, in my opinion. I can't imagine that you can do better than this. It's such a good interview. It's so good, in fact, that after listening to it and editing it, I've asked Lisa if she would be willing to reach out to Marichal again and see if he would be willing to do a webinar style format for our listeners in June of 2023. And I will start securing commitments pretty early on for that. And then we'll just have like a Zoom session where you can ask him anything about everything related to the topics that he discusses both in part 1 and part 2. So in part 1 today, you understand he'll share his backstory. You'll learn a little bit about the different roles he's had, and he'll just share 3 or 4 of the pitfalls of what will be 10 that he'll share over this week and next week. And I'm not going to do a full preview of everything, but I'll just mention one of them he talks about today is alcohol and what you need to know about alcohol. But I really encourage you not only to listen to this, but tell your friends, neighbors, colleagues, anyone you know who's particularly got a student going off to college. But it's also equally as good for someone who's got somebody at college. Either one, if you're going to college or you're at college, or if you're in high school and you want to know about the areas that kids get in trouble in college, this interview pertains to you. So without any further ado, listen and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Your College Bound Kid podcast, and I am very excited to be here today with Marichal Gentry, who is going to be talking to us about a topic that is so important to every college-bound kid and their parents, which is how to prepare for college. 10 things parents should consider, and it's not all about them, it's about you too. Mr. Gentry, we are really happy to be able to interview him because he has both high school experience and university experience. Right now, he's the enrollment outreach coordinator at Durham Academy in Durham, North Carolina, which is a wonderful private school. And before that, he has had a long career doing lots of wonderful things. He started off, he earned a BA in political science and French from Sewanee, and then he came to UNC Chapel Hill and has a master's degree in social work. Then he went to Harvard and got 2 certificates at the Harvard Institute for Higher Education. You must have been very tired by the time this all transpired. But, he went on to be vice president for student life and dean of students at Sewanee. And he also has worked as the associate vice president for student life and the dean of student affairs at Yale University. And you also worked at Middlebury. Is that correct?
I did. I was there for 8 years. I worked as I started as the associate dean of student affairs, and then became acting dean of student affairs. And then my last role there, I was the associate dean of the college.
Wow. So yeah, we are so excited. We're very blessed to be able to have someone with your experience and knowledge on the podcast because you can speak to both sides of this transition. Tell me a little bit more about how you got into, working in higher education and student affairs. Tell me about your professional journey with that a little bit.
Sure. Happy to. And thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. So after I finished at Sewanee as an undergraduate, my first job actually was in consumer banking.
Really?
And, yes, I worked for what is now Wells Fargo. It was First Union National Bank, and I was stationed in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that was my first time living outside of Tennessee, where I'm from. And I worked there for 3 years, and Sewanee actually called me back and asked if I would create a minority recruiting program through the admission office. And I sort of balked at first, but then I realized, I said, I think I'd like to do this. And I just gotten a promotion at the bank, and on my first day, I told him that I was leaving, and he said, "No way." I said, I want to go back to my alma mater and do something that I feel is very worthwhile to the institution. I was one of, I think, 10 or 11 students of color, let's just say Black students who started there. And it was the largest class they had ever had. And so I was able to create the program, and now, it has quite a few more minorities and students of color there. And so I worked there for 3 years, and I really went there to sort of travel and wanted to find out what I wanted to do with my life after creating the program. And I also was asked to create a personal development program for a summer bridge program that Sewanee created. And I did all the curriculum. I did the curriculum, and then I did sort of daily personal development workshops for high school students. So 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So some nights I would do 3 sessions, different sessions. And that sort of gave me the impetus to think about a career in social work. And I left Sewanee and got into the UNC Chapel Hill School of Social Work. And I concentrated on families and children's services. And my second year, I did a practicum at Duke University Medical Center's child psychiatry inpatient unit. It was called the McDowell unit. And it was a wonderful experience. And one thing that I realized that I was a pretty good writer, because we do a lot of writing at Sewanee. It's one of those things that we learn how to do there. And the psychiatrist always said, I love reading your chart notes because they're so clear.
No one has ever said that to me, by the way.
So I was very enthusiastic about receiving that kind of acclaim from someone who had been, involved in writing the DSM, it was the DSM-3R back then, I guess.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so there a few jobs came open at Duke, and one was in the pediatric bone marrow transplant program.
Oh, my.
And I sort of looked at some of the innovative work that they were doing, and the work that Dr. Joanne Kurtzberg was doing. And she's a fantastic person. And I wanted to join her team, and I got the job, and I provided psychosocial support to all the patients, both inpatient and outpatient, and their families, and then the nurses and the doctors. I mean, so I was supportive of everybody. It was a pretty big program. It was growing because she was doing a lot of innovative things, and people were coming from all over the world to seek treatment. It also honed a lot of the skills that I knew that I might need if I were to go back into higher education. And I didn't notice that, but the person who hired me at Middlebury College, my dear colleague and friend, Ann Hansen, said, gosh, we're seeing so many, situations where it would be nice to have someone of your knowledge to come and help. And you do stuff with students anyway. So, and it was just a good opportunity. It was a good breaking point for me. I'm telling a long story, but I think it'll get to where we're going. I had broken my foot and taken an African dance class.
It was literally a breaking point for you.
It was a breaking point. It was. And so while I was recuperating after surgery, someone brought some literature for me to read, and the Chronicle of Higher Education was one of the journals. And I saw a job at Middlebury College, and I knew about it because of this language programs. And I was a French major. So I said, oh, that's an interesting place. So I sent a resume, and within a couple of days they called. And within a couple of weeks, I was there working.
Wow.
Sold my house in one day. It was almost meant to be. And so I worked there for 8 years. Wonderful experience. My boss sort of came into my office one day and asked if I would be interested in a position at Yale. And I said, no. Why would I want to go to Yale? I don't know anything about Yale.
Which is what everyone says, right?
So I'm not even sure what state it's in. And she sort of laughed, and she sort of let it go. And she came back in because a national search firm had been contacting her to ask if she knew of any candidates that she would recommend. And she was recommending me, and I really didn't know that. And so she asked again, and she said, well, okay, I know you want to move back down to the South at some point. Why don't you just use it as practice? Just practice. Or you're interviewing. And so I said, okay, I'll do that.
She was tricky, right?
She was.
So tricky.
She was great, though. I thought she was trying to get rid of me at first. But that was not the case. She had my best interest at heart, I think, and I love her to death. And one thing led to another, and I got the position. And I'll never forget Peter Salovey, who's now the president at Yale. he was the dean of Yale College, phoning me and asking if I would take the job. That I went through the interview process. It was very, very intense process, and I said yes. I decided to go. So I was there for 8 years. I had a wonderful experience. And I didn't really want to leave when I decided to go back to my alma mater, Sewanee, for the second time. My mom got sick. My dad had already died. And I felt like it was my duty as one of her two sons to go back and care for her. So I sold her house in my hometown, and I bought a house in Sewanee and moved her in with me. And during the day, I was the dean of students and vice president of student life. And at night, I took care of my mom on weekends. And so I learned how to paint fingernails and buy clothes and do all the things that you would do for someone that you love. And she had dementia, and cared for her for 2.5 years. And then she passed on. And I made some commitments, professional commitments, being on search committees and selection committees for some pretty high level positions. And I fulfilled that. And then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. And I took the opportunity I had to orchestrate a lot of things because of COVID, because our students, their belongings were stranded on campus and they needed to get them home. And it was a big ordeal. And once that was over, I had a lot of time to sit at home and think about it. And I decided I wanted to move back to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so I resigned. I was going to take the next 9 months to sort of, reflect and rest and write. I wanted to finish a book that I'd started, and my house sold quicker than I anticipated. So I had to leave, and so I left for North Carolina without any plans other than just to get there. And I found a place. I had to build a place. And I lived with a person who was my choir director when I lived here before. And he let me live with him for 6 months until my house was built. And I finished the book while I was waiting for my house to get done. And I had the great fortune of making contact with Michael Oku-Steiner, who's the head of the school at Durham Academy. And emails back and forth. And we were on Zoom a few times. And I decided that I thought that I could make a contribution to students who were thinking about going to college, or to think about, I just thought I would make a contribution to the school. And I'd known people who had gone to school there before. And so he found a position for me in enrollment management. And also I work in diversity, equity, and engagement as the project manager for the action plan. So I have been there for a year. I've had a wonderful experience. It's been great to be back in North Carolina.
Well, that's fantastic. And I always love for people to, especially kids, to hear about, how all of our career paths are not linear and straight, and they're determined by chance and circumstances. But certainly sounds like you've really had a wonderful career so far, and it's not over yet. So speaking of those kids, now you have created a wonderful list of things that parents should consider when they're preparing their kids for college. And the first thing that I saw on your list was independence. So can you tell me more about how parents should look at their kids' independence now? Well,
at college, and I wrote this list. It's not an exhaustive list, but I wrote the list just because I continued to see recurring issues that cropped up with first-year students in college, ways that I felt that they could have probably been a bit more prepared had there been some conversation and communication between the parent and the student before they left. And independence is one of those things that you don't experience until you experience it. And
it's true.
At college, there's just more freedom. There's no one looking over your shoulder. And I wanted to encourage parents that if they were still waking their children up and doing things that their students could do on their own, that it was a chance before they left for college to stop doing that.
Right.
That students are able to do these things on their own, and they should allow their students to become adults. They're not adults quite yet, but but they're leading lives that are more independent. Also, as a way for me to encourage family members that there's no need to continue to check on their students on an hourly basis once they get to college.
I like not that I would ever do that, by the way.
It happens. I mean, you see students on the telephone between classes, or anytime they run into a snag or somebody says something that they don't like, they are phoning home. And also, I wanted parents to know that they don't have to be prisoners to their cell phones waiting on a phone call from their child.
Right.
And there are lots of administrators and faculty members and people at the college campus who are there to help them. And all of those people are not going to treat their child like a child. They're going to treat them like an adult. And so to be consistent, parents should do that as well. And so I just believe that parents should allow their child to start or continue building on the process of adulting, as the term is used.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because with technology, you can use Find My Phone and be like, oh no, little Susie's late for class. And, as a parent of a high schooler, you might intervene with that. But as a college student, like, well, I guess little Susie's professor is going to have something to say about that. And it's hard to make that shift, particularly, I think, if it's your oldest child.
Exactly.
And then it's also hard for them. My daughter is right now, she's studying abroad. She's a rising junior in Elon University, and she's studying abroad in Italy. And I've noticed a huge growth in her ability to take care of administrative tasks, but it's mostly because she can't get a hold of me, right? Exactly. There's like a 6-7 hour time difference. And I really see like just a lot of maturity blossoming out of that. So yeah, be a little less accessible is what you're saying, I think.
Yes. I mean, if they need you for real, they will call you.
Exactly. You'll know.
You'll know. You'll know. But let them become adults.
Right. And then, a lot of people don't know about FERPA, but FERPA is super important. So talk to us about FERPA and how parents should handle FERPA and how students should handle FERPA.
Sure. FERPA, of course, is the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's a federal law that protects the privacy of student records. And since the beginning of time when students began going to school, the parent or the caregiver or guardian had been in control of that record. And what makes up the record? It could be disciplinary records, it could be class schedules or transcripts, grades, student course schedules. But when the student becomes 18 years old, they now own the record, and the record becomes, and it's usually not a problem until parents wonder why they might not have received any grades after that first grading period.
Like, what happened? Should I get a report card in the mail?
Exactly. Why am I not getting it? And they realize that, or if they call an administrator asking, how's my child doing, that any personal identifiable information, we're just not going to tell them anything. And we'll say, have you spoken to your student? And we encourage them to do that. But there are whatever application or web program that the college is using usually allows students to designate whether they want their family members to receive those grades. Now, parents often have a problem with, I'm paying the tuition, but the law protects the student's records. And so it protects the privacy of the student. And so I think it's just important for parents to understand that and, and to know that that is an option. But if you have the talk with your child, it's usually not a problem. I mean, students don't really mind necessarily if you see their grades. You've been seeing them for the last 12 years, but they do own the record.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the thing is, like, people might get irritated at the school, but the school can't do anything about it but follow the law. You have to have that conversation with your kid, and it has to be an agreement. And you have to, they have to go online and waive their rights. That's
exactly right.
And so that's probably, we always recommend that that's something they do before they leave for college, especially the first year, and especially if you're one of those parents who feel like, I'm paying for it, I deserve to have some access to information about what's going on.
That's right.
But yeah, a lot of people are just shocked to find out that, what do you mean I don't get to know?
Exactly.
It's crazy. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is to start talking to students about the Career Center, which I think is fabulous. Tell us more. Why should even a freshman go to the Career Center?
So there are so many opportunities that the Career Center has access to that students should avail themselves of from the moment they hit foot on campus. There are opportunities for jobs, for internships, for externships, and Career Centers have all that information at their beck and call, and students should take care of. They should take it upon themselves to take a look at them. Now, they can go to the Career Center, but often Career Centers have electronic newsletters, and so having a conversation with your student about reading the newsletter or making a contact with, making contact with the people in the Career Center, I think is very important. And many Career Centers do developmental. Their newsletters are developmentally minded, which means that they will write 4 newsletters, one for first-year students, one for second-year students, one for third-year students, and one for fourth-year students. And they'll let them know of opportunities, graduate schools that are coming, people who are coming for jobs. A lot of students, and I'm one of them, will tell you that using the Career Center has its advantages. I got my first job through the Career Center because I signed up for one of the interviews of one of the banks, and I got the job. So I just think it's important that they have a conversation, and also here's another thing that I didn't write, but I think it's important to say. Oftentimes for internships, jobs or companies and organizations won't pay a student to work at their company during the summer, but the Career Center often has hundreds of thousands of dollars that will pay students on behalf of the company so that they can earn some income and not be stuck in New York City without a way to eat.
Oh my goodness. No, that would not be good. Yeah. I feel like, I know like my daughter and my niece, like, they kind of have to be pushed to do these things. Like, well, I'm not getting a job right now. I'm 18, leave me alone.
Right.
But it really is important as parents to keep like nudging in that direction because, the Career Centers have so many opportunities for kids that they couldn't even imagine. Like you said, like, well, that internship won't pay. That's fine. We'll pay for it,
We'll pay for it. Yeah.
And so just for parents to really, hopefully get their kids to be very aware of the advantages of doing that.
Well, the other thing that they do too is they sort of take a look at some of your interests and try to find things that you might be interested in doing. It's not that you have to, a lot of people have found out that they don't want to be in banking by doing an internship.
Exactly.
And so
Yes.
it's important to just try things out because it doesn't hold you. You don't have to do it once you decide that I don't want to be a clerk at a law office. I don't want to do that anymore.
No, I always say it's better to know what you hate. It's better to know what you hate than what you like almost because like you can like a lot of things, but if you really hate doing something, that's going to make you miserable. So it's good to encourage your kids just to try out different things and see how they like it.
Yes.
So the next thing that you talk about is safety. And I know we'll probably spend a fair amount of time on this because I think safety is a huge concern for parents sending their kids off to college. And, so what advice do you have for parents on how to either handle their anxieties about that or prepare their kids for the differences in their safety situation at school?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I would say is that it does not matter if you're looking at colleges or universities. It doesn't matter if you're going to a large school, small school, in a large city or small city. Having safety on your mind is really important all the time, and just making sure that you have done your homework as to all the different services that are available through your college. And there are during the orientation period, they will talk about safety. Sometimes there's a lot of talking going on during orientation. A lot of people don't, they've decided that, I don't need to know about this. But safety is actually essential. And there are lots of apps that colleges and universities are using now. The one that I'm most familiar with is the Live Safe application. And it's an easy app that you can put on your phone where you can report things when you see them. For example, if you're at a fraternity or sorority party and something gets out of hand, you can report it and the police are there pretty quickly. Or if it's you get stuck out late at night and you need to get home, and the only way you can get home is walking. There's a GPS feature on some of these apps, and it tracks you like you would be looking for a bus route. And so you can see the student and where they are if they're getting home. But students have to avail themselves of it. All they have to do is turn on the app.
Right.
Where at my last school at Sewanee, the entire community could be able to live safe, not just the people who were part of the college or university, but the entire community.
Oh, that's nice.
It was wonderful because the entire community could report, oh, I've seen a dog stranded and needs help, or a tree has fallen in the middle of the road, or there's a big ruckus going on at the football game. Please come and help. So safety is important. You know, when I went to Yale, it's a big city, or it's in New Haven. It's right smack dab in the middle of the city. And there are people from the outside of the institution that don't always have the best interest of students and administrators. And so having an app like that sort of just keeps people safe, especially when they're walking late at night through the city or coming home from a different side of town. So I just suggest that students and family members make sure that they are listening to what the public safety officers or the police, depending on the kind of college or university you're going, are saying about the safety and how to stay safe and to keep yourself safe while you're a student.
Yeah, because sometimes I think teenagers feel invincible. You know, they feel like, oh, nothing's going to happen to me. And that's a developmental step. But, you know, it could be a dangerous developmental stage to be in when something does happen. And so I guess just kind of to, you know, repeatedly encourage them to, you know, take the security officers seriously and to, you know, get those apps on their phone.
Exactly.
That would make everybody feel a lot better.
Well, the other thing is not just invincible, but oblivious. I mean,
yeah,
students
that's true.
They walking waywardly, looking at their phones, and that's a wonderful opportunity for someone who doesn't have their best interests at heart to attack.
Right. Absolutely. So just also encouraging, like, sort of just an awareness of your alertness to your surroundings.
Exactly.
Is important.
Exactly.
Oh, so the next subject you have is alcohol. And I know that parents have lots of feelings about that. And it's a tricky subject. So what do you have for us on this one?
Well, the legal age to drink is 21. And colleges will adhere to the law because they have to. But we know that underage drinking still occurs on every single campus that's known, whether it's allowed or not. It's easy to find alcohol. It just is. And for many first-year students, drinking is a rite of passage. And
yes.
It's no secret that it's easily obtained in college. It's just everywhere. And so some parents have children who might not have ever taken a drink of alcohol. But the research says that most students who are beginning college have had at least an experience of being intoxicated. But the freedoms that's true. But the freedoms that they have in college are different from the freedoms that they had as a high school student. And so there's no one watching them or overseeing them or monitoring if they're drinking or not. They can just drink. Also, the peer pressure has developed, and trying to fit in and fitting in might mean that, you know, you're going to take a sip of alcohol because that might be your way to get some friends. I would also say that most colleges and universities aren't looking to get people in trouble who are underage drinkers. But if you bring attention to yourselves, they will, because they don't want to drive it underground. That makes it even more serious problem than it is. But if you bring attention to yourself by abusing alcohol, by vandalizing property or getting into fights, or disturbing the peace, or being just downright obnoxious, or driving while intoxicated, then students will be disciplined, jailed, or even worse. And so what I want to say to family members at this point is that many of them have had conversations with their students about alcohol. But I think leading into college, having some additional conversations where you're listening more than you're talking to your student, to sort of see where they are, and to also be confident to share your own values about what you think of alcohol. You may not think that they're listening, but they are listening. And so I offered a few ways that parents can bring up these topics just in organic conversations. You don't have to sit down with your child in a sort of formal way to ask these questions and to have a conversation. Let it be natural and organic. Get in a car, take a drive, play some hoops, shoot some pool, or crochet, whatever you want to do, and have a conversation, and ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions like, what are your thoughts about, whatever it is, or what are your expectations about when you go to college and you're confronted with an opportunity to do something that you haven't done a lot in the past, or what is your plan if? And these questions are for people who have students that they know are going to drink when they get to college, or even for the ones who aren't planning to drink, because they may be around people who are drinking, and they need to have some confidence that they'll be able to care for those people in the event of an emergency. Yeah. And the other part of that is that I ask parents that they listen to what their child says, even if they don't agree. And parents should also have responses like, it sounds like you're saying, or it's been my experience, or I can see that you feel that way, and I'm trying to understand why. And I think those are the kinds of open-ended responses that sort of continue the conversation, even when they come back on that first holiday. It usually is Thanksgiving, where they spend some extended time and gives parents an opportunity to sort of ask some of those questions.
Well, yeah, that's really good advice, because I think, my knee-jerk reaction would not be to listen. You better not do this, or you shouldn't do that because, or this is a bad idea. And then it just closes down conversation, and they just start tuning you out like they do when you ask them to take out the garbage. So I'm going to work on my listening skills. Thank you for that tip.
Friends, this completes the first half. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part. And friends, for our Thursday episode, Vince is back, and we'll be talking about an article called College Enrollment Drops, Even as the Pandemic's Effects Ebb. And it's an article that appeared in the New York Times, and it's by Stephanie Saul. Our question from a listener comes in from Patty from Illinois, and she's concerned that her son has too few schools on his list. He's down to 4 schools. They're all out-of-state schools, and they're all rather large. And so she's wondering, is that list too small, and is it not diverse enough? And do they need to make a change? And for our interview, it'll be part 3 of my interview with John Ambrose. He's the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Michigan State University. And of course, I cannot leave you without one of my 2 favorite quotes. College is not a prize to be won. It is a match to be made. See you next week, everybody. Lynda, great to have you.
Thanks.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us, and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 14. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel, and to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stelianos Dimitriou. If you want to have a coaching session with Lisa or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegebounkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Thursday.